Good morning, and today we talk about Nafta. What is happening? Last evening, President Trump, while addressing a rally in Arizona, very clearly said that he'd like to finish off Nafta. And in case he finishes off Nafta, what happens? And why is he trying to do that? Let's not forget that President Trump, right from the day he started his campaign, has been talking about finishing off Nafta. And the discussion started on the 16th of August. Unfortunately, they did not make any headway. When the discussion started, the American representative said, Nafta has fundamentally failed. Many Americans and needs major improvement. As opposed to that, Canada and Mexico have been saying that it needs only minor tweaking. Who is right and who is not is a major question. But as I said, the negotiations started last week, rather than the 16th of August. No major agreement could be reached, as we will see just now. Next negotiation is supposed to be in December, and then in Canada. In negotiation which stresses over months and months shows that there is definitely inherently something wrong, because this is not something new that is happening. And any new agreement, in case it's not beneficial to both the parties, can never be deemed to be useful. And what is happening is that the economic condition of the world over is showing weakening signs of growth. And if the trends in history are an indication, the fresh agreement may not be signed. The current negotiation process between Canada, United States and Mexico to determine the future of the continental trade is very slow moving, and the play fields change quickly. And they change for each nation separately, but to what degree, that is not known. And then, one thing is certain, that NAFTA will be born in a new economic order, because by the time it's really signed, the whole economic scene would have changed. It's conceivable that the Canadian economy will start deteriorating in 2018, that's next year. And then what happens? I'm not saying that the economy is going to be in a recession. I'm only thinking it's a possibility. And we could see a slowing in the fall or the winter coming up. As a matter of fact, the Canadian economy is still cooling. Last week, Stats Canada reported that the manufacturing sector went into a reverse during June, contracting 1.8% after 3 straight months of gains. And the decline was mostly on petroleum and coal products. There was also a drop in the purchase of the transport equipment and weaker activity in the chemical product sector. This is a tough turn for the manufacturers, who had spent better part of the post-2009 recession struggling with market losses and plant closures. Then again, the Bank of Canada's main concern is consumer prices. They have remained tame till June, but they rose by 1.2% in year-to-year basis, and that is more than 1% of the previous times. Given the modest increase in inflation, the central bank has little need to reconsider another hike in the interest rate, because that will be a major shock to the economy. Now there's another problem which is rising, that's a rule of origin. American want that the North American content in auto industry be increased from the present 62.5%. If that happens, Nafta would not be able to survive. In the assembly process, autos go back and forth, and more than dozen times the parts might come from certain parts of Asia, China, India, or from Brazil, or from anywhere. Then there's another problem, and that is the problem of the trade deficits. Let's not forget that a modest Canadian surplus, and that is what the reality is. The Canadian surplus in the US trade is $12 billion. But it becomes immediately a deficit of $12.5 billion when you take the American surplus in services in view. So 12 billion becomes minus 12.5 billion. The total is in fact a loss of 24.5 billion to the Canadian economy. And if that is so, should it be acceptable? The Mexican merchandise trade surplus is 64 billion. It is loss, but compare it to the deficit with China, American deficit, that's $350 billion. So President Trump says that $350 billion I'll handle separately because that's not a part of negotiations of Nafta. And now come to another fact, that the pace of GDP is decreasing. The GDP is growing at a smaller rate than the original one. It's all the more reason to acknowledge that this country along with USA is definitely going to be headed to a period of weaker economy and a weaker activity on the economic front. The forecasters generally are always agreeable, and they find this time that there was an increase of 3.5% in the first quarter of this year. The second quarter they thought would be 4%. Unfortunately, that has not happened. The big picture is very snappy. While our 4% estimate was a higher target, it is still not sufficient. And the way the things are going, Nafta talks, if they turn ugly, could jeopardize both exports and business capital spending next year. And these are the two sources of the growth of the Canadian economy. You can count on replacing some, but not all of them. And then there is a downshift in the housing. Now when there is downfall in exports and there is a downfall in the business capital, along with the downfall in the real estate, the economy is likely to tank. And come with that the political decisions which will worsen the situation. For example, specifically in Ontario, the government has finalized a bill which will open the way for increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And as a London School of Economics report says, that the rise or increase of the minimum wage even by $1 would result in a loss of thousands of jobs. Secondly, the increase in the minimum wage shall make the economic activity and the manufacturing activity unviable to the owners and the businessmen. So they'll either downsize or they'll close down, adding to the already worsening economic situation. In that situation, how is it possible that US, which already is crying about a trade deficit of 24.5 billion, 12 billion plus, turning into 12 billion minus, would tolerate that and agree to sign the re-authored, reworked Nafta, if it happens at all. At present, there is no hope that it would happen. And President Trump's statement last evening in Arizona is a very clear indication. And he was very clear. He said, in case we cannot finalize it, I'll finish off, I'll terminate the agreement. Now, you see, when a person is at the last end and is already on a ventilator, and you are threatening that patient, what happens? The patient dies. The shock is too much. This statement of President Trump has sent shock waves in the business circles in Canada and Mexico. And as Robert Letmay said, that NAFTA has fundamentally failed Americans. And then they want a major improvement. As far as the major improvement is concerned, neither Mexico nor Canada are willing for that. They are willing to have minor tweaking. And the major concerns are going to be the country of origin. Major concerns are going to be the service sector. America wants service sector to be open to Americans both in Canada and in Mexico. But they are not willing to open the service sector in America to the Canadians. And that's a major thing. 12.5 billion is approximately the surplus of the Americans as far as service sector is concerned. It's not a level playing field. Let's not forget it. So in such a situation, it's quite possible that this process, if it doesn't improve, and this economic cooling that is likely to take place, could result into a deep freeze as far as economy of the country is concerned. And that's not a happy sign, neither for Canada nor for the continent, but on the whole, Canadians would suffer much more. And that is why I had said earlier, the need is to revert to the bilateral trade agreement. And another thing, now the Americans are saying that Chapter 19 should be finished, and we should revert to the major thing that all actions would be sued in the country of dispute. That means that the exporter is American, then the case goes to the American court, and if the exporter is Canadian or Mexican, the case goes to the Canadian and Mexican court. It looks good, but majority of the exports are from USA. So the majority of the case will go to USA and they'll be decided in the American favor. This neither Canada nor Mexico are willing to do. All these factors combine to show that all is not rosy as far as NAFTA is concerned. And we had better be prepared for burial of this concept. And the sooner we do it, the better it would be. Thank you.